Hey guys, what's going on? So, looking pretty good in the markets at the moment actually. We are seeing a lot of movement. DXY, as we kind of saw with this corrective price action, we did get quite a nice drop off. We'll just quickly zoom into that a little bit more in a second. But if we can just draw this corrective price action on over here, we can see that price was basically just squeezing in there and then just sold off. It looks like we could be correcting over here, but it comes with a bit of risk because we are at this low where this can just kind of come up and then we get something like that, and then it becomes something larger in order for it to go lower. So I wouldn't position myself here personally, but you can understand that you have this strong impulse. If this correction was here and it did commit, it could take us into the next price point of here, which is basically in this low. So it's possible, it's there, but once again, this is a lot of accumulation in here as well for this to just commit now. So, you know, this isn't as low probability as if we just had something, you know, more so like this, and then it dropped off and then came back up. But kind of now it's just like over a period of a few days, it's done that. But just understand that as well. Look at it on the 4 hour. We can see here, you know, we are in this sort of zone here. Wouldn't be surprised if we did get something like that before we went. I would personally want to see something like this, but it's not looking like it will be very likely. And then in the overall move, that would just become so corrective that I would understand if this kind of did make its way back up. So it's one of those ones where then it just gets a little bit more messy at that point. But if we did see the push away from this, it would be quite interesting. The JP225 is also one which is somewhat level of quite interesting. So we can see here that we have this high, this double top, and then we've started to extend. It's no surprise that we're going to start pushing back up a little bit before we come down because of how we're approaching this. So we can see here that we correctively pushed up and then pushed down, and we kind of have this like sort of left shoulder, head and shoulder sort of feel, but the right doesn't go above the left essentially. So we don't really see that as a very, very good opportunity yet. What I would love to see though is a strong impulse out of this, and we're trading in this area, we correct, and then we see something like that. That could be something of interest, but at the moment it's still too soon to tell if we are going to be selling off just yet and making our way back down here. So like I said, this is still looking like a running channel to the upside. New Zealand yen, there was a counter buy trade here, wasn't taken for me, but we can see here that we are gravitating to this high. So we could see if we just kind of look at it on the 15, we were selling off quite nicely, and then as we pushed here, we tapped into this sort of area here, and we didn't really get much commitment. As we didn't get the commitment, we started to then push up. We created a continuation over here, and then one which wasn't so easy to catch there, and then we had another one over here. So we were creating continuation after continuation, and then we created something a little bit larger. As we started to aggressively push back down, we started to come into this area which we understood there was the possibility for the push down, and it could continue, but where is it really coming from? It hasn't even tapped into that at that point there. So we have that as a near miss to this high, and it's not really at any major value area. So the long is probably still on the table at that point, so we had to understand that. As we zoom into the 5, we can then see that we correctively start to approach it. We did actually correctively move along the way, had an impulse, correction, impulse, and then corrective reversal here into the low, and then we retraced. Would this have been the best trade? Probably it would have been quite hard, maybe with 5-minute refinement there, but you'd have to understand the risks that come with this trade, and then potentially you could have had a 6-ish% trade here, and then you'd probably lock in a break even just there now, or be quite aggressive with that move, so you might have been out of the trade around about 5.3. And it would have always been a short-term play trade, but with the aggressive move, that's quite good. And now we're seeing that potentially carrying on to reach this high. So that is something that I would be very, very sharp about, because if this does move over here, then we could see the turnaround that we're looking for. So essentially, this is still one big range. we can still see something like that before we go, but more than likely this is kind of just now completed what it needs to do, and I don't believe that there is much else that we need to be waiting for on this, so that's quite nice. Next one is EJ. EJ is also in the same sort of circumstance, and I guess that kind of helps with the long bias on NJ, because we could see across the yen pairs altogether that they were creating these sort of tight flags to go to the upside, and I'll just go through all of them. UJ not so much, but we can see that there's two variations. We could potentially have this as we come into here, scoop, come back up once more, and then push down, create a flag, or it could be something a little bit more evolved and something like this, 1 2 3 into here, and then we see a push down. So I keep them both on just because I'm looking at both. I can understand that, but more than likely I am more interested in this one first to see how this develops, but I understand that this is also a possibility, and then we understand that if it does extend, this could become a possibility for the future, where we come into there, correctively come into here if we do correctively move, and so forth. But more than likely I think we may aggressively move and start making the down move. We'd have to wait for that one for sure. GJ, same situation. It wasn't the cleanest, but we could see that, you know, we did start creating a continuation over here. So we pushed up, and then if I just clear all that background noise off, yep, we had this low, and then we saw this as a squeeze for this to potentially go higher. To be honest, it's not the best trade on GJ, so I didn't take it, but definitely we can understand it when we look at all the pairs together, how they were all creating this tight little trade. AJ not so much. AJ was actually quite corrective as well. This one actually just happened to sell off a bit, come into this value area, and then pushed away. So now it's only starting now, but it's still moving a little bit choppy. You can't really see the structures for what they are, and I don't think they would be very easy to catch, but also this isn't the most sort of progressive price action, so I don't think I would have wanted to get involved in this. But understanding that to come up into this, I mean, there's just so many variations, but I don't think I'm going to be looking for the short anytime soon yet. I think this still has room to move up aggressively, and I think we could be starting the move here, but we could come up a little bit, come back, scoop the third touch, and then start moving without getting the second. So that's something I'll bear in mind. CJ as well, we had that little tight squeeze that I was just talking about. We can see it over here that we broke above this price. This was one of the ones that had a good indication of what could potentially happen. We created two bottoms over here, we had two tops, we had the little squeeze, and then the buy could have been a reduced risk entry most probably, and you be tags in the trade. But I think it does come with risk. I think it can still come back down here. If it does come back down here, then we'd have to take a message from the market and see, but more than likely I think at this point in time it's already kind of making its move. So if it does start coming back down here, I would wait a little bit more. And CJ for Swiss yen wasn't the easiest one. You probably would have been tagged out for sure. We just had this really volatile spike for some reason. We are sitting in a very valuable area, and I wouldn't be surprised if this just consolidated around here for a bit whilst the other yen pairs get to where it needs to be. So this is an area where you just don't want to be trading right now. Position wise, it is a good area to be positioned, but for sure this can just, you know, and then whilst the other yen pairs are going very bullish, this could just be, you know, doing something crazy, getting very messy. We could see something larger as well. You know, it's just there's so many variations of what could potentially happen with this one. I wouldn't get sucked in too much with the current price action, and I would kind of just read between it and understand that there's more better trades on the table. But if this shapes up to be something like this, then we could see what happens. Aussie US dollar. So originally I was thinking this could have been a mistrade, and I'll show you why. So what I was looking at was when it was just roughly around about here, which was yesterday, I was then looking at this bit of price, and you can see here that price is coming up. So if we just go next, you can see over here we came into this value zone, but I was asleep around about, no, I wasn't asleep just yet. I was waiting for price to get to this point up here, and then as it was there, it just kind of sat around and then dropped off. As it kind of dropped off, it just retraced now, which no surprise, but there was a trade in there that was somewhat of a mistrade, and it was the mini double top. I suppose it probably wouldn't have been caught anyway, but the mini double top was there, and then we had the push down, then we created a flag over here. On the 5 refinement, we can see it where you would have seen it like this, and once we had enough, we would have just put that in there, taken that roughly for 10, and then it would have just been probably an easy 1.5-ish trade. So that was basically it. But now that it's actually making its way back up and potentially just going to tap into that liquidity over there, I'm not too bothered actually. Evolving this now to just see what it could potentially be happening. So zooming back out, we can then see that we can take these lines and look at it like this, and then we can potentially see if this does do whatever it needs to do and then makes its way back up to here, and then we see it potentially sell off. Then we have a nice ascending into that. So that would be structurally a little bit better, and then you can understand it as a larger structure where then it's something like that. And then if we do get the expanding, then we just understand that price was up here, came back down, and it could possibly come back up here before we sell off, but more than likely it will probably come in there and just go. So probably come up halfway, do whatever it needs to do, typical Aussie action, and then we'll go from there. So I'll keep it simple for now, and I'll just be looking at something like this, and I'll be waiting to see how it reacts to this sort of level over here. GBP CAD as well, I think GBP CAD definitely has a lot of potential. It's just not yet in the area I need it to be. It's just kind of sitting around. Once it gets to around about this area, I can then entertain something like that for the short, but it's looking a lot messier, and the more it kind of corrects, the less interested I am, I'll be honest with you. This just isn't the sort of typical nice price action I'm looking for, but we'll have to wait and see what happens, to be honest. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. There's a lot of GBP news coming out as well. We have today we have some BOE interest rate decisions, 22, and then followed by some GFK and retail sales tomorrow. So could form some volatility in the market that we should be aware of. But obviously, I'm thinking that after this BOE news comes out, we just get a little push up, price comes up here somewhere, and then we'll wait and see what happens. GBP USD is looking like it could be going long, to be honest. So as we saw, we came into the 1, 2, 3 up here, but we didn't get the most progressive selling action. If we were going to sell off, we would have started the sell off quite aggressively already. We kind of just correctively sort of moved down, create this larger structure, which actually looks so much like a bull flag on the higher time frame. And now we're seeing more so that price is just kind of aggressively pushed up, correctively came here, could just have another aggressive push up, comes up here, and then possibly we're up here, and then we're wondering if we're going to be creating something like that, where we then have a larger flag to continue to the upside, but not something that I think is going to happen. I think more than likely, if we're going to go, we're going to go regression. But this is a nice head and shoulders territory as well. We did have this sort of head and shoulders here, left shoulder, head, right shoulder. Left shoulder was a bit of a slump, but we can see here on the 1 hour that if I just go back to the line chart, we could essentially get something like this, where price comes up, comes back down. We see something like that when we create head and shoulders in that light. More than likely, I think that's a good possibility. And then we have that angle, something like this. And yeah, I think that would be pretty cool for a trade as well. If we saw something like this shape up, then we could understand that and be like, okay, cool, that's in a good value area, and we can see what happens from there. So just wanted to share that with you and see what you thought. The next one is GN. I think GN is pretty good. Similar situation to what I was looking for in AU. With GN, I'm just basically waiting to see if, I mean, this first touch isn't the best anyway, so it becomes a little bit lower probability. I think the most important thing for me that I'm looking for is to see how we react to this sort of inflection point, or the little point up here. Do we kind of just come up here and then do something like this, where I can make sense of it, and then maybe we have something like this leading up to this, and then we have an internal 1, 2, 3, and then there's just more confluences into this area where I can look for a short play. So like I said, it's a little bit of one where I think we just have to wait and see what happens, but in the grand scheme of things, we have a mini double top there. We are just below the higher time frame 1, 2, 3, which is completely fine because this does somewhat override it, but this can also just sell off, especially like we're looking with GBP CAD and so forth. So positioning in this area could be very strategic and smart. I think I'm just waiting to see. Also, we have to understand that when you are on the 1 hour, we can see that we have something like this. Something like this can form, not the highest probability, but if we do get something like that, and you know, it just does what it needs to do, gets this area, and then does whatever it needs to do and gets to here, then we can understand and look at it. But then it won't look very, very nice, but it might just be there. But knowing how this pair is, it'll probably be quite sharp movement. We see something like that, it moves up quite aggressively, comes back down. With the news coming out, let's wait and see. Stay sharp. We have as well Euro GBP. So this is the area where I am looking for a continuation flag now. So we do have that aggressive push up, which I was looking for. We are still in that corrective sort of price zone. The question is, if we do get the flag, do I have enough to manage to this high? That's the one question I do want to really know, is if the flag forms and we get something like this, comes back down, then yeah, for sure, I can take that. You know, I'm more than happy to look at something like that and be like, okay, fine, yeah, I can take this position over here. If I took it with, like, let's say 12 pips to the high, more than enough room to manage. If I take a little bit larger, it is what it is, still more than enough room to manage. So something like that would be some more of an interest to me, so that I know that if we're coming into this high and we retrace, it is what it is. That larger structure would accumulate a lot of price in there for the upwards move. Looking at this one here as well, we have this sort of expanding fill into this, which I do like now, which could form as a potential reversal, but we have this larger expanding, so I think this is more so a potential continuation. That's just a little bit of liquidity there. We actually broke it, pushed, we didn't get commitment. If we were going to sell off, we would have had the commitment and carried on from here. More than likely, we're seeing with other GBP pairs, there's the potential long on the table as well. So I'm going to wait to see if this can push down, and then we get the push up, and then do we get something like that, where it just becomes a larger expand in there. This, I wouldn't really say it's an anomaly. I would say that is probably a bit connected to price. Yeah, it's one I'm going to just be patient with and just see. I don't really know how to read this one. I don't think there's enough data on there to just jump out to me and say, hey, look, that's what it is. But let's wait and see what this develops into, and if there's a trade. I think the best thing to do is just maybe put on this trend line at the bottom, and if we do start approaching that and we are looking at longs, we could potentially get in for a long. Euro USD, we saw this aggressively starting to push after we had this inner structure. We pushed up aggressively, created another structure, and it looks like we could be going with the continuation now, especially looking at the DXY possibility. Then we've got USD CAD, nothing to really report there, still dripping off. Didn't get a 3-touch on that. Sorry, I'll just go back to that. We didn't get a 3-touch on this. I was looking for a 3-touch for a potential sell, but didn't quite get there. But we had to understand that it comes with a lot more risk because we are at this low. So, you know, you have to ask yourself, do you want to be taking that trade? Not really, to be honest. Not on a large account, you don't want to. So for that reason, I think I'm happy to wait and see what happens with this. Perhaps maybe this is still part of the game, and then we actually see the retrace. US pairs might just pull back. look at the news today for the US pairs. We have the Fed Chair Powell's testimony, which essentially at 3 o'clock we could see some very good bull momentum come into the market and push the prices up. And I think that's something that we should really be patient for. I think there is some other news there as well. Yeah, anyway. We have New Zealand Swiss. New Zealand Swiss, very much like we were looking at on Aussie US dollar and GBP New Zealand. I'm looking for that structured approach. We are coming up to it. I'm going to wait patiently till we get here, and then I'm going to evaluate. It does look like, you know, we have these sort of points above it, so we can gravitate to something else, but more than likely, it looks like we are coming up quite correctively, and I'll evaluate on the RO3 on the hourly when we get there and just see if there's any sort of structure. If we do get some sort of structured approach where it's more so something like that, and then come into it, and then we retrace, create a flag. There's going to be a lot of opportunity anyway on something like this, so we're going to have to wait patiently and see how that plays. But New Zealand Swiss is definitely going to be a good one. Euro New Zealand, still in that larger flag sort of territory. I'm not too convinced with the buy just yet. I think I'm going to wait for it to come back one more time before we even see it. More than likely we have this sort of leading into this, and I'm not sure if, you know, I'm ready to take this trade just yet, but it is currently looking like this is the middle section. We're going to come in, tap into the low, and then go for the long, and then that could be a good play for this larger structure. So that's one that I would also be sharp for, but understand that it does come with a bit of risk as well, because you are kind of just trading in the middle of nowhere. But we're looking to gravitate to the high, which is the most interesting part of that trade. We have EuroCAD. EuroCAD is not anywhere that I'm too happy with at the moment. Basically, we have this push away, and it's just kind of trickling at the moment. Doing this. This is not really the sort of price action you want to be sitting in, to be honest. Even if it did come up here, if we saw something like that, clear flag, and we started moving to that, that could be a bit more interesting, but more than likely, it's a difficult trade. It is a difficult trade. Looking at it from the daily, it makes sense that we're going to gravitate into this low, and I think for that reason I would look for that. But yeah, the next one that is on the table is CAD Swiss. I think CAD Swiss is definitely a good one as well. I'm still waiting for it to potentially push up a little bit more, come back down for another touch before we look for the long, and then see if I can manage it to back to this high to see if that does kind of get. I know, to be honest, I'll be looking at this high. This would be the price target zone, so positioning would be here, the price target zone here, but it doesn't look historically like we do really respect this, and more than likely we might just come into this point here, over here, and then go from there. So just be wary that this may just not give us what we want, because we have been correcting quite a lot just up here, and I think we've accumulated a lot of money in this area alone to give it enough of a push. So I understand that can easily be a mistrade as well. We have this cool little bit of structure here. The only negative is that we were trading into here, so the only place you would have taken that is with a risk trade, and you would have basically taken it at the top. There was the room for the entry. I'll be honest with you, you could have been looking at it like this, and then perhaps maybe even over here somewhere. I think in terms of stop loss, yeah, that would have been more than enough. That still would have been a decent trade, and then you would have aggressively managed around about here. Once you broke around about 3.3%, you would have then probably put your stop loss around about 2, been taken out for 2%. Only reason for being aggressive is that low, to be honest, in my opinion, because even though you have this larger time frame structure here, which makes a lot more sense now, right? When you look at it, it's like okay, sick. You have to understand that this could just be a large flag to make it to that third touch. Even though this can drop off, if it does, we can take a message from the market, and we might even see something like this. You know, if we got something which was nice like that, it's a no-brainer why we would take it. Just see if I can. if we saw something like that, we would definitely look to take that, right? Because we've pushed away from all of that price over here. Your next price target's down here, so you can position yourself in to go to that bottom. So that's the trade that I'd be looking for. And then last but not least, it's Aussie CAD, and essentially Aussie CAD's been selling off. I think the trade opportunity was here for the 1, 2, 3. We then pushed away, create this tight flag, and then we had one entry there, and then ever since there we've just been moving aggressively to this low. So personally, there's no trade to be taken just yet until we create some sort of structure. I wouldn't be looking at this. I would look for something more so either like that, or if we do come back to, like, let's just say trade to this zone, we could create something like this where we push up, push down, get no commitment, come back up again, get no commitment, and then we tap into that liquidity zone there, and then we get something like that into this area, taking out all of this liquidity, and then we sell off, and then we understand that this just is the beginning of a larger correction, and then we trade to this low to understand that this could easily just pull back aggressively and create something larger before we go, and then that would basically be the trade that I would look for. So yeah, that's basically it for the pairs that I've got on. I mean, obviously there's nothing there which is too exciting. I think the ones that really stick out are, well, the ones which are waiting for the structured approach, really. If we do get them, we'll have to wait and see. They could be very profitable, but we'll have to wait and see. So guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video.